So, good afternoon, all. Welcome to Transition Partners Everyone Hates Recruiters vlog. This is officially the fourth episode that we're due to record, where we'll talk about the trials and tribulations, challenges, experiences, and learnings within the internal recruitment world, agency recruitment trends, and good and bad experiences. And so I'm hoping that everyone will get to take some sort of nuggets of information and some good insights away from this session and learn a few things along the way. So today I am joined by Charles Hyde, who is the Talent Acquisition Manager for Experian. And Experian are one of the fastest growing global decision analytics business. For those who are not aware or have not heard of Experian, I'm sure most of you have. And we've worked with Charles for, I don't know, 2-3 years now. I think you've worked with Emma. So welcome, Charles. It's nice to have you on the show because I know Emma's and I think Emma's been pestering you for a while to come on, hasn't she?
She has. No, pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. So what would be really good is initially if we could just find out a little bit more about your background, give me a quick kind of whistle-top tour of your career history and how you got to where you are today.
Of course. Very briefly, I started out, as many do, within agency recruitment. So I cut my teeth for about 3 years there, recruiting into software engineering, C++, Microsoft, and so forth. I then moved into a technology recruitment and ultimately manager role within another sort of well-known FTSE 100 data analytics business. I was there for 11 years and I joined Experian in November 2018. And I managed talent acquisition for our global decision analytics business. So we know it as GDA. And essentially we are a global geographically dispersed software house within Experian. So about 800-900 people, main centers across the UK, Kuala Lumpur and Sofia in Bulgaria. And we create incredibly exciting and innovative software across decisioning technology and identity and fraud technology in particular, as well as having a lot of analytics capabilities on top of that. And we then pass that out to our colleagues across our global regions who then sell and support and so forth those products. And as you said, it's the fastest growing part of Experian. It's very dynamic, very innovation led, and a really exciting place to be.
Fantastic. So interesting that you've come from an agency background and then moved into internal, and obviously you've done a number of years in internal and progressed through to manager level. What was the reason for moving from agency to internal?
Again, probably a story that many people can relate to. Agency is a great place to cut your teeth. It's a great place to learn that delivery focus, the real sharp end of recruitment. But back in the good old days when I was doing it, it hadn't evolved in the way that it has now. Agency recruitment was still very much a sales-led business. And whilst I think that's still the case to an extent, I think good agencies these days are more consultative. But it was very sales-led, and what I enjoyed was actually that more consultative side, supporting clients and adding value to their processes. And it was just a very natural transition, if you'll pardon me, pun as it were.
Like the word of use of transition there.
Very natural transition into an internal role where you can still leverage that delivery focus and all that you've learned in agency, but apply it in a more strategic, consultative way and actually see the benefits of what you're doing in real time and at first hand, which you're, I guess, often not able to do in an agency context.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I completely agree. And it's I mean, I started in agency recruitment in about 2001. And obviously I've gone through a couple of recessions, obviously dealing with a global pandemic right now, and it's evolved and changed so much over the years, which you know, it keeps it interesting and challenging, but it is 100% so much more consultative now, and it's more about partnerships, which just makes it more enjoyable, doesn't it? And that's obviously what you've enjoyed throughout the years. So within your current role, how are you finding things at the moment? And like obviously everyone's been affected in different ways. everyone's been affected by the current pandemic. We're in the process of hitting the second wave now. How has that gone for you, in terms of your role, your team, and a business?
It's certainly been interesting. It's certainly been challenging. I think there are challenges, difficulties, and advantages to the situation. Early on, it was very much around the mechanics of how do we continue to operate. It doesn't just apply to talent acquisition and HR. Every function in the business had to make a call on how do we progress from here. How is this going to work operationally? So we had to work out, how do we onboard people? How do we do background right to work checks and things like that? So real sort of fundamental back to basics stuff that you take for granted had to be rethought. Once we'd gone through that initial phase, we settled into the routine, as we all had to, of largely working at home, working remotely, getting people set up for that. And I think initially, as you may have experienced yourselves, the candidate market, the recruitment market, did slow very noticeably as people established where they were in their, what was their position going to be? How were things going to pan out for them personally? And then I think as we all became accustomed to the fact that this isn't going to go away anytime soon, or certainly wasn't, we have to carry on, and life doesn't stop. You start to see candidates taking more of an interest in roles. And in fact, they've got more flexibility and availability to attend interviews, for example, as again, you probably found yourselves. And we and our hiring managers became more adept and accustomed to interviewing and hiring on a purely remote basis. So it took a while, but I think now it's working very, very well. We have the new norm, it's now known, and we continue to recruit, we continue to engage successfully with candidates, and we continue to grow. And it's actually been a really interesting process to go through.
Yeah, fantastic. I think there's so many positives to take away from the situation, isn't there? Like you said, I think at first everybody was kind of like, oh God, what do I do? How am I going to deal with this? How do we continue to grow and recruit and all this sort of stuff? And I think a lot of businesses, because they didn't know how to handle it, manage it, as the same situation for us. This is the first time we've all had to deal with something like this ever in our lives. It's been a big change, but there's so many positives that we can take from it, and so many businesses now consider remote hires, remote working, remote interviewing, virtual, all this, everything that's been going on virtually. And I mean, like us, for example, as a business, we were doing a lot of face-to-face meetings, face-to-face events, and we're doing so much more now via Zoom and Teams and things. It's just, I think it's going to become the way of like you say, the new norm and a new way of working. But it's going to be nice to have that blend, and obviously there's going to be a better work-life balance that comes with that as well. What as a business, is there anything that you feel that you implemented that was new that others could benefit from hearing about? Is there anything like kind of any new initiatives or anything different that you think that you implemented to help as a business?
Yeah. There's lots that we've done, and it's always difficult to know whether that's beyond the norm or very much in line with what other companies are doing. I think the biggest thing for me was candidates in particular and our hiring managers needed to become comfortable and accustomed to the fact that this is all going to happen remote. And we did a lot of work around putting together really easy access information packs, resource packs, if you will, that we could share with candidates and share with hiring managers so that they could become acclimatized, accustomed to the business, to our processes, to good interview practice and all that sort of stuff that you would typically share with a candidate in person. You show them around the office, you chat to what the business does, you talk to hiring managers about best practice, you share CBI interview guides, whatever it might be. All this stuff that you take for granted and would deal with on a one-to-one level, you now have to do remote. So having really good resource that can support and bolster those one-to-one conversations that you're having over the phone or over WebEx, I think was really important. And candidates in particular have responded very well to the information pack we sent out to help them. And that's something that will, that will apply to non-remote working as well. But I think allowing people to feel comfortable, remote context has been a key thing for us.
Yeah, fantastic. And what, tell me a bit more about like kind of your experience in terms of hiring throughout this process. Obviously, we've touched on it a little bit, but what would you say that the market's saying at the moment? Like, what's the demand like? What's the supply like in terms of candidates from your experience? And obviously, you're based in London, I think, aren't you?
I'm personally in London, but we do a lot of our hiring in Nottingham as well.
Yeah. So it might be interesting to tell like the viewers and listeners more about the market and what from your experience and personally, and then as a business, what you've experienced over the last kind of 6 months or so.
You know what, I think it depends enormously on your industry and the types of people you need to hire. But speaking from my own experience, we do a lot of hiring within engineering, software, DevOps, SRE, and also within product and strategy and areas such as that. I think now things have settled and we're all accustomed to this remote way of doing things. The candidate market is reasonably buoyant, but I think there is also a huge amount of competition out there. And I think the biggest single consideration at the moment is the way other organizations are competitively reacting to the situation. And you hear a lot of anecdotal sort of indicators that there are businesses, for example, in London, who are going out and hiring candidates around the UK on London-weighted salaries, but they're offering them full-time remote working. Now, that's a pretty significant play. That's quite game-changing, and that's very
to compete with, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, I think at the moment that's a minority of companies, but I think the more that organizations, particularly those SME startups who have that flexibility from the get-go, the more they start to offer this greater flexibility, this remote working, they of course open up a much larger candidate pool for themselves, and they offer a very compelling situation or very compelling offering to their candidates in terms of flexibility. So that to me is the big thing at the moment, and it's how do we as a global complex FTSE 100 business and others like us, how do we react to that? What is our offering going to be? What does the future of work for us look like? And they're the big questions that we're all thrashing out at the moment.
Yeah, but you guys have got a pretty robust, solid team, haven't you? And I think more recently, well, even pre-COVID, you were, doing really well and successfully direct hiring, which obviously would have helped throughout this process as well. So it sounds like you've been able to secure some really good, strong talent. But I agree, it's still very competitive. Sorry?
Just bear with me.
Yeah.
Just bear with me. No, perfect case in point of the challenges we face working with.
Yeah. I think it'd also be really interesting to find out more about, I guess, your drivers and how you've progressed. So a good question, I think, to start with for others to learn from your journey that you've taken. Obviously, you've progressed throughout your roles, you've progressed to manager level. What advice would you give to your younger self? So perhaps something, there's a good example, I guess, is I know from experience, there are a lot of agency recruiters, and there's internal recruiters with much less experience that are available on the market and looking for work, and obviously would want to really develop themselves and are keen to experience that progression. What advice would you give to them?
It's a good question. I've over the years interviewed a lot of recruiters, and recruitment is, historically, it's relatively straightforward industry to get into. You don't need specific qualifications or degrees or certifications or whatever. And I think a lot of people went into recruitment or have gone into recruitment thinking it's an easy ticket. It's an easy way to earn good money and you don't need these qualification skills. Actually, nowadays, recruitment takes, I think, a very broad skill set. And candidates who are wanting to progress down that, particularly that internal talent acquisition route, and I don't mean, I don't count myself as a particularly fantastic recruitment manager by any stretch, but I think you need to think about that broader commercial awareness piece. It's very much progresses from being a sales role where you can get away with knowing relatively little. You actually really need to understand the business. You need to understand the interrelationships of your business with others, the interrelationships within the organization, particularly a large, complex matrix. What do people do? What is their role? Why is it important? What are their drivers? What are their motivations? And you need to be good at getting to know and getting to understand people, put time into building those relationships. That's not to say that isn't relevant to an agency role, but I think it becomes more and more critical when you move in-house and move into those internal leadership positions. That would be my main point. Think about the organization you're applying to. Think about what they do, what are their drivers, what are their challenges likely to be, and what can you offer that's going to help them in their strategic direction, whatever that might be.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think what you said earlier about, listening and understanding and getting to know the business and the stakeholders, I think is key for both internal and external. So not, an agency side, it's really listening and understanding your clients and getting to know their businesses. And also for internal, obviously, your stakeholders are everything. And I think that sometimes recruiters often, don't put as much emphasis on that side, that part of the role. So completely. And there's lots of tips and coaching material out there, for to help with things like that. Well, in fact, a good question. Top tips for coaching stakeholders and hiring managers on like the recruitment process, interview process. What's your view? What are your tips on that side of things?
There are lots and lots I could draw on there. There's one in particular that I am a big advocate of, and is this concept of steering hiring managers away from this idea that interviewing is about you as an individual or a business judging somebody and making a decision on them. Interviewing, if technologists in particular, you're looking for good marketeers or good product managers. They're interviewing us just as much as we're interviewing them. And yes, we want to put them through a rigorous process, and they will expect to be put through a rigorous process and will appreciate that. But we need to offer them something compelling. This is a two-way street. So I'm a big advocate for hiring managers putting time aside during an interview process to really get across to candidates what is exciting about this role. What are we offering? Very easy. I'm really lucky. I work for Experian. We're a top 20 business. We're growing. We're exciting. We have great benefits. We have wonderful people and culture. And I can't speak highly enough of the company. We accept that. We take it for granted. We work here and we enjoy it, but that becomes our norm. But it's not the norm. John or Jane blogs who is interviewing for a role with us, and it's really important. It's critical that we share our experience and share it from the heart. On a personal level. This is what I'm working here. This is what I think is brilliant about this company. This is what I think you would really enjoy. And it's not about overselling. It's just about being honest and giving asking yourself the question, why do I work for this company? Why am I still here?
I always think that's a great interview. I think that's a fantastic tip. And I always think that's a great interview question. You're going for a job and you're like, why do you work here? Why do you like it? is a great question. And at the end of the day, you could be interviewing with a company like yourselves that's got a great brand, great reputation, global business, some really interesting stuff that you guys have got going on. But it's that person that you're working with, and ultimately people buy from people, don't they? And I think that's really, really important. What throughout your career then, and your training and coaching that you've had throughout your career and your journey, what would you say is the best, like the top tips that you've received that's really helped you come along and develop?
You literally just said one of the main ones, which is people do buy from people. You will know even more than I do, the recruitment world is in a constant churn of technologies that are offered to market that are supposedly going to reinvent the recruitment wheel.
Yeah.
Access candidates, never before thought of ways of untapped talent. And you could attend seminars and look at product reviews day in, day out. What is missed is actually, when it comes down to it, people do buy from people. So it doesn't matter how much technology you've got. It doesn't matter how much money you put into branding and networking, whatever it is. All that stuff helps. But fundamentally, if that candidate at the other side of the desk or the other side of the WebEx isn't bought into you and doesn't have a rapport with you, chances are they're not going to engage, and they're probably not going to want to roll with you at the end of it. So I think keeping that sort of mantra first and front and center is critical. Otherwise, I would say know your business. The two points overlap, but if you're a candidate, you want to get a real understanding of the organization at a granular level. Actually, what's it actually work now? What is the culture like? Do you have a social? What's the coffee like? What the office is like? What's my desk going to look like? And it becomes much more about those soft touch pieces. Okay, I get the role. I get what the company does. I get the tech stack. But actually, I'm going to spend 7-8 hours a day somewhere. I need to know more. So I think as a recruiter, it's incumbent on us to really understand our business and its people, and understand our value, what you might call value proposition. What are we fundamentally about? And to be able to convey that to candidates effectively. Because it's actually a lot easier said than done.
It is, isn't it? Definitely. And good candidate experience. Sorry, what was that?
No, I said two overlapping points, but I think those combined are the biggies for me, and as all contribute to the candidate experience.
Good candidate experience is so important. How, as a business, how do you measure candidate experience?
Well, there are different metrics you can look at. You can look at acceptance rates. We put out surveys. So we use a third-party provider who does new joiner surveys and hiring manager surveys, amongst others, for us. And the results of those are published to a dashboard regularly. You can look at attrition rates, regretted attrition rates. There are all sorts of metrics that businesses have available. Lots of companies put a huge amount of focus and investment on talent acquisition. But talent acquisition doesn't really get you very far if you've got a leaky bucket at the other end and people are leaving. You're promising a great deal but not delivering it. Candidates leave within a year or two. So it's a pretty basic but effective measure. What is your regretted attrition rate? But I think all should be on a journey of constant improvement. So when you hire people, survey them. How did they find the hiring process? How did they find their recruiter? How information they were given access to? What was the interview process like? Harvest that information and then take action on it. Take that insight, action it. And if you're seeing themes, address them. If you're seeing attrition, interview those leavers. Why are you leaving? What are the issues? What do we need to do? So recruitment is only effective at a net level if you're dealing with the candidate experience once they've joined as well. No, I completely agree, and it's so important to
to recognize that you can put all these systems and processes and things in place and get the candidate experience right, get them through the door, but then it's continuing to work on that, learn throughout the whole process, keep improving. There's always room for improvement, isn't there? And if you don't continuously improve, you'll just become complacent, and those percentages and measurements and things will drop. So
exactly.
Great that you recommend that.
I encourage it. I think there is an angle here for the candidate as well, for the employee. And I don't think this is the case with us, I'm glad to say, but you hear anecdotally of candidates in other organizations who they don't get a promotion they go for, or they don't get a piece of personal development they were angling for, whatever, and they get upset and they leave.
Yeah.
I encourage, and I remember I used to sit in front of groups of graduates during assessment days, and I would say this to them, even as interviewees: take ownership. Excuse the siren there. Take ownership of it. If things aren't going quite as you expected them to, or you haven't received some of the training you thought you were going to get, or things haven't progressed as you hoped they would, have a conversation. Speak to your manager. Take ownership of it. Set your stall out. This is what I want to achieve. How are you going to help me do it? And I think there is often a concern that might seem pushy or cocky or overly bullish. But in my experience, managers appreciate that. No manager, no company is perfect at developing its staff. And actually, having staff who are keen and passionate and come to us and say, hey, look, I really want to achieve this. I really want to move in this direction. I'd really love to get experience with whatever. We introduced something called gigs, which is a way whereby employees can gain sort of almost like micro secondments within the organization, get pockets of short experience in another team on another project, just to see what it's about and gain a little bit of exposure and insight. There are all sorts of ways companies can facilitate it, but I think making sure candidates know that they can take ownership is really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, fantastic, definitely. And I personally, I'm the same. I would much rather, like you say, no one's perfect. We're all human. As much as we try to think about progression plans and putting everything in place for our staff, I would much prefer it if somebody did come up to me and be like, right, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to get to. How can you help me get there? What do I need to do? 100%, because like you say, it shows that drive and that passion, and they're keen and eager to succeed. Fantastic. So a couple of other bits and pieces. Have you got any sourcing tips or candidate attraction tips, any other tips that you think would be useful to share that others can learn from?
I think there are many people out there now. I've reached a sort of grand age and probably less at the coalface than many others are. But I think when it comes to candidate attraction, it's going to sound repetitive, but it comes back to what we talked about: people buy from people. Yeah. We can all send out 1,000 emails a day. We can scour the job boards. We can do all that good stuff. But actually, where you can get involved in the communities, get involved in events, get FaceTime with people, in person when we can, or digitally when we can't, but engage with communities, but do so on a genuine level. I think, if we go back over the last few years, there is a lot of sort of networking events that I was invited to have attended that were really just thinly veiled recruitment events. Actually, there wasn't really much of a genuine interest in learning about these people or the technology or the work they were doing. It was really just a matter of getting names on a spreadsheet. So engage on a genuine level with the communities that you're interested in. And again, understand your offering, understand your business, what it offers, what's attractive about it, what's different about us, what's our USP, and what can we share with candidates that they might find interesting. I'm also a big advocate. This is perhaps a slight segue from the question, but I've always been a huge advocate for graduate and entry-level careers programs. and I think engaging with candidates at that young age when they are absorbing information like a sponge, they're eager, they're passionate, they're energetic. I created and ran grad programs in my previous role. And I look on LinkedIn now, and these folks are in senior leadership positions, and they've progressed through the ranks really well. So I think engaging with candidates and setting yourself up as a business to accommodate people at that junior level actually really pays dividends, in my experience. It's not always easy to do, and it takes a bit of time and investment up front, but actually it more than pays off over the medium to long term.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Brilliant, great. Final question to you is, so I always ask people for nominations. So someone that you think might be interested in coming on the vlog, getting their brand out there, their name out there, the network, as obviously we've discussed, and have some good content to share as you have. Is there anyone that you'd like to nominate?
I know a lot of people, both internally and on the agency side, who I think would have far more interesting things to offer than I do. I couldn't list them all now, I'd be here all day, but that I would have a think about and come back to you on. But certainly, I think there are some brilliant people out there, including colleagues in Experian who I'm in awe of, and I think are way more talented than I will ever be. And I will share.
I've really enjoyed talking to you, and honestly, you've had some great, interesting points, and I'm sure lots of people will love having a good listen. I'm sure they'll be really interested in hearing what you've had to say. If anyone wants to reach out to you, whenever we put these vlogs and pods and things out there, we generally do get people interested in reaching out, whether it be for a bit of advice or ask you about opportunities or anything that, to expand on anything that we've discussed. Are you happy for them to reach out to you?
By all means.
Is LinkedIn
I'm on
the best? LinkedIn probably the best.
Absolutely. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Charles Hyde with an IHID. Always happy to connect and share ideas. But I hope that there's something in what I've said that may resonate or be helpful to somebody out there. And always delighted to hear from anybody who wants to chat and share experiences.
Fantastic, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for sharing what you have done today. It was really great to talk to you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you very much.
Bye. Take care.
See you.